My self-centered father cast me aside to lavish everything on my entitled half-brother. Now he's begging for my help to cover up a crime, but my response left them stunned and exposed. I'm Kyle, 18, male, the overlooked son, the one they always blamed when things went wrong. My dad, Frank, made it painfully clear throughout my life that I was never his focus. That role belonged to my half-brother, Evan, 24, male, his cherished firstborn. I was just a shadow in their story. Evan is my half-brother from Frank's first marriage to a woman named Marcy. I never met her, and from the stories I've heard, she wasn't exactly a nurturing figure. She abandoned Evan as an infant, and Frank overcorrected by treating him like a prince. I came along later, born to Frank's second wife, my mom, Laura, a warm-hearted woman who deserved better than Frank. Let's talk about Evan. He grew up spoiled, acting like the universe revolved around him. To him, I was a nuisance, and Frank encouraged that mindset, calling it tough love. What a farce. 6 months ago, I was gearing up for my senior year of high school, dreaming of college and breaking free from the dysfunction at home. Then out of the blue, Frank summoned me to the living room, beaming. Big news, he announced. Evan and his family are moving back home. By family, he meant Evan, his wife Mia, and their young son Ethan. Why would a grown man with a family return to his father's house? Because Evan lost his job due to his own recklessness, and Mia refused to get one. Instead of solving their problems, they chose to leech off Frank. And Frank. He was ecstatic, but there was a catch. I had to go. He gave me 2 weeks to pack up and leave, threatening to involve the authorities if I resisted. I was still in high school with no way to support myself. Luckily, my grandparents, Ruth and Henry, opened their home to me. They were livid with Frank but knew arguing with him was futile. Living with them wasn't always smooth, but it was a sanctuary compared to the chaos at Frank's. Meanwhile, Evan and Mia took over my old room, transforming it into a nursery. Frank indulged them, splurging on fancy baby supplies, something he never bothered with for me. Aunt Janet, the family's rumor mill, kept me in the loop. Evan's arrogance was limitless, and Frank fueled it, even begging relatives for cash to support them. Then the real storm hit. Marcus, a close family friend and CEO of a tech firm, contacted me. He'd been a mentor, stepping in where Frank failed. He revealed that Evan had been embezzling thousands from his company, with Frank covering for him. They were in serious trouble. Marcus hadn't gone to the police yet, out of respect for my late mom, but the clock was ticking. Sure enough, Frank and Evan showed up at Ruth and Henry's, pleading for my help. They wanted me to lie to Marcus, saying the stolen funds were for my college savings. The nerve! I refused and they spiraled. Frank flooded my phone with calls and messages, trying to guilt me with talk of family duty. When that didn't work, he even harassed Ruth and Henry, but I held firm. Marcus finally laid down the law, warning Frank to back off or face the consequences. Meanwhile, Evan's crimes snowballed. He'd been using company money for lavish purchases. Marcus had no choice but to press charges. I decided to turn the tables, sharing proof of Evan's theft with Mia and his social circle. The fallout was immediate. Mia walked out and his friends turned their backs. Frank lost his job and his standing in the community, while Evan faced the law. In the end, I came out stronger. With Marcus's support, I secured an internship and focused on my future. Ruth and Henry stood by me without question. For the first time, I felt liberated from Frank and Evan's poison. Their collapse wasn't just fate, it was justice. For me, it was a turning point, a chapter where I finally took the reins. With Evan and Frank's lives unraveling, I thought the worst was behind me. But trouble has a way of resurfacing, especially with people who dodge accountability. Weeks after Marcus filed charges, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Against my instincts, I picked up. It was Frank. His voice trembled, desperate. "Kyle, we need to talk." I nearly ended the call, but curiosity won. "What now?" I asked, steeling myself for another sob story. "Evan's in jail," Frank said, his voice empty. "They set bail, but I'm broke. I've lost it all." For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. "You made your bed," I said icily. "I know I don't deserve your help," he pressed, "but if you could just loan me," I cut him off. "No, you chose this. You kicked me out, enabled Evan's crimes, and now you're paying the price." "That's not my burden." Silence hung on the line. Then, barely audible, he said, "I was wrong, Kyle, about everything. Too late." I hung up. But Frank wasn't finished. The next day, Aunt Janet called, her usual chatty tone replaced with concern. "Kyle, your dad showed up at my place last night. He looked awful, like he hadn't slept in days. He asked for a loan for Evan's bail." I gritted my teeth. "Let me guess, you refused." "Obviously," she snorted, "but that's not the issue. He's desperate, and desperate men do foolish things. Her warning lingered. What if Frank did something reckless? I didn't have to wait long for an answer. 2 days later, Marcus called. "Kyle, we've got a problem. Your dad showed up at my office, demanding a meeting. Security escorted him out, but not before he caused a scene." My stomach sank. What kind of scene? He accused me of destroying his family and threatened to sue, which is absurd given the evidence against Evan. But he's unhinged. Stay cautious. I thanked Marcus and hung up, my thoughts racing. Frank had always been bullheaded, but this was a new level of delusion. That evening, Ruth pulled me aside. "Kyle, your father left another voicemail. He said if you don't help, he'll—" She paused. "He'll what? He'll claim you were part of Evan's theft." I scoffed bitterly. "That's ridiculous. Marcus knows the truth." Ruth's expression darkened. "I know, but lies can spread. With Evan's trial nearing, the press might latch onto it." She had a point. The last thing I needed was my name smeared. I called Marcus again. He listened quietly, then exhaled. "I'll deal with it. But Kyle, you might want to look into a restraining order." The idea of legally severing ties with my own father should have stung more, but after everything, it felt inevitable. The next morning, I woke to a social media notification. It was Evan, posting from jail. How he got access, I'll never know. The post was a chaotic rant accusing Marcus and me of framing him. The comments ranged from disbelief to doubt, but a few people seemed convinced. That was enough. I screenshotted the post, sent it to Marcus, and started drafting a response. If Frank and Evan wanted a fight, I was ready. But before I could post, Mia messaged me. We hadn't spoken since she left Evan. Her note was brief. "Kyle, I have evidence Evan lied. Can we meet?" We met at a quiet diner. Mia looked drained but resolute. She handed me a USB drive. Evan documented everything. Emails, receipts, even recordings of him and your dad plotting to pin it on you if things went south. I stared at her. "Why give this to me?" Her eyes glistened. "Because I fell for his lies for years. But after what he did to you, to me, I'm done shielding him." The drive was a treasure trove. It not only confirmed Evan's theft, but also captured Frank admitting he knew the whole time. I gave it all to Marcus. Within hours, Evan's bail was canceled and Frank was arrested for conspiracy. The media went wild. At the trial, I testified. Seeing Frank and Evan in court broken and defeated should have felt like triumph, but it just felt hollow. Afterward, Marcus checked in. "You okay?" I nodded, just ready to move forward. And I did. With Evan locked up and Frank facing fines and probation, the storm finally passed. I poured my energy into my internship, graduated high school, and earned a college scholarship. Ruth and Henry hosted a small party for me. As I blew out the candles, Ruth patted my shoulder. "You did well, kid, maybe, but the real victory wasn't their ruin. It was my freedom. For the first time, my future belonged to me." Frank sent one final letter, filled with apologies and justifications. I didn't respond. Some bridges are better left in ashes. If you connected with this story and felt its emotional weight, please give it a like, share it with others, and follow for more real-life tales and heartfelt journeys. Your support means everything, and it helps us share more stories like this. Thank you for reading, and I'll see you in the next one.